Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Fine Arts and series. So Fine Arts and is a series of conversations with professionals who are in fields of intersections of the fine arts and other industries. So studying the fine arts can prepare students to be successful in many different fields. And this series is designed to educate our fine arts students on the many varied opportunities that are available to them at these intersections. So today we will be discussing fine arts and education. And I'm so happy to be joined by Dustin Van Orne, who currently serves as the Manager of Strategic Marketing and Visitor Services at the Modern Art Museum, and Kathryn Albright, who is the Development Director at Kids Who Care. So Dustin and Kathryn, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We'll go ahead and jump right in. To start, could I have each one of you briefly introduce yourselves and just discuss a little bit about how you're navigating this space within the field of fine arts and education?
Dustin, you go first.
All right. My name is Dustin Van Orne. Like you said, I'm the Manager of Strategic Marketing and Visitor Services at the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. I've been there for almost 19 years. I started as an intern when I was at TCU studying art history and sculpture. I got my BFA in sculpture and my BA in art history, and I graduated in 2003. Basically, my job is essentially about marketing the museum. So my background in art has been really helpful and really beneficial in preparing me for understanding what it is that we're doing at the museum. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you.
Well, I am Kathryn Albright, and I currently am the Development Director and the International Relations Director at Kids Who Care. And I came into this in a really different way. I have a BS in Communication Disorders and a master's degree in audiology from UT. And so I practiced as an audiologist for about 15 years. Prior to going to work at Kids Who Care. And I was in my job as an audiologist, a couple of things that prepared me to do this. I worked on a Sound of Texas project, which was an advocacy program for newborn hearing screening. And so I was an advocate for kids. I did a lot of training for leadership and for teaching. How to use screening equipment, and also as an advocate to have newborn hearing screening implemented in hospitals. And so those were some things. And then I also did a lot of writing, so professional papers and things of that nature. And so I came in on a grant, a part-time temporary grant to come in and to begin to write grants for Kids Who Care. And so I came in sort of with a development, tell a story, be an advocate sort of person. And so I've been there 21 years now. And so that part-time grant worked out for me. And so that's what I currently do. So from audiology to a musical theater, it was, just a teeny weeny bit of a leap, but there you go. So
that's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. We often find, especially when we're going into the field of fine arts, that we have this idea that it's just going to be performance. A lot of people do, right? It's just this performance piece. And then we get into our fields, our careers, and often find that rather than this straightforward trajectory, we're doing a lot of winding.
Yes.
So I thank you so much for letting us in on how you came to be in the field of fine arts and education and that intersection. Can you tell me what do you love about it, and why have you stayed?
That was easy for me. I mean, I work at one of the most beautiful museums in the world, so it's not hard to go into work in the morning. The artwork changes pretty drastically over the course of the year. So we have 3 exhibitions every year usually, and then we have a collecting program So we're able to acquire and exhibit new acquisitions on a regular basis. So it's always fresh, it's always new, it's always exciting. And so, yeah, it's just, I started as an intern in the communications department, and then I've worked in the curatorial department, and now I manage the visitor services department. So like you said, over the course of time, my job has changed as you do. And it has really kept me interested and kept me engaged. And it has provided a lot of opportunity to learn and grow and experience world-class art in a world-class building.
Thank
Love
you.
that. What I love is that I get to use both parts of my brain equally. So I'm equally engaged in the creative process. And for me, that's as a writer.
Mhm.
And so I use my creative skills to write grants in a good way. And then we produce original musicals. And so I'm also a writer for content for original musicals. So I'm engaged in that way. And when I'm upstairs in my working, I'm hearing singing, acting, and dancing things happening down the hall. And so how cool is that? So that part I really, really love. And then I'm equally engaged because of what I do with budgets and finance and all of that part. And I really like that too. And so my job is interesting in that one day we're doing, writing a show, and then the next day we're, creating our budgets and preparing our financials for a board meeting. And so both parts of my just one, I just have one, I get to be engaged, and I really, really like that. I think for me, the reason that I stay is that I work with kids. And part of what I do is a leadership training. That's also one of the roles that I have. And so for me, I get to watch kids transform by the programming that we offer. And so while I'm not downstairs singing, acting, and dancing, I am upstairs in the boardroom with a group of students ages 1st grade through 12th grade that we're teaching all sorts of leadership and confidence skills that they're going to need no matter where they end up in their life. And for me, I get to see them become who they're supposed to be. And so that's what I really love, is that I have that opportunity to just watch them grow, watch them discover, and then launch. And that's my favorite part, when they launch. So
that's amazing. And I think that's kind of why we all are in this field, right? Is that we love to be able to see that development with our students. That's why we do programs like this.
Right.
We want to engage them and show them all of the different things that they can do, the many talents that they are developing through their course of study, whatever that course of study is.
Right.
And the beauty of fine arts is that it allows them to hone in and really develop so many different transferable skills that will help them no matter what they're attempting to do in the future, no matter where that takes them.
Right. And I think for, one of the things that we do, we're a little bit of a strange fine arts program in that we have equal balance of fine arts. So musical theater is sort of our path. But we also have this really powerful leadership, entrepreneurial thinking skill set that we're teaching. So it's the combination of the two that we're working to build in the kids, because I would guess maybe 35% of the kids that we work with go on to be an artist or be in an arts field as their chosen profession. But the rest of them will go on to be an incredible attorney or a teacher or a mom or whatever, a CEO, because the two skill sets side by side build the full person. Again, engaging both sides of the brain. You've got to have that creative skill to be an amazing surgeon. And as an actor, you better know how to do a budget or you're not going to be able to pay your bills. And so, it's kind of the balance of the two. Yeah. And so, for me, I think that's a really important thing. Like you said, helping them find find their gifts and find their, find the things that they can do really well and make those better, and find the things they need to work on and teach them things to help that part. So
And this is the educational piece, right?
Yes, yes.
We tell them, hey, you're so talented, but you're going to need more than just the talent, right? Just the raw talent to become successful in your field, whatever that field may be. It takes much more than that. So can you tell me a little bit about what you would suggest TCU students in particular, what would you suggest to them that they should be doing right now to prepare themselves for a career at the intersection of fine arts and education?
I have a good answer to that because I was a TCU student in the fine arts department, right? And so I got my job, like I said, as an intern through the internship program at TCU, and that led ultimately into a full-time job at the museum. But one of the things that, in retrospect, I wish that I had done more of was take more electives in the business school, or even just taking more non-arts oriented classes. I really focused in on my majors and my 2 degrees. And that was, while it was really great and it was my passion, I ultimately found that, you know, all of those other things, like Kathryn said, doing a budget, understanding finance, I wasn't prepared for all of that. And so I ultimately ended up going back and getting my MBA. And what's really interesting as we progress now through, you know, as the arts industry is starting to catch up with the rest of the business world, you know, a lot of my job is now based in data analytics, in data analysis, and you know, I manage a data warehouse and know how to program and write SQL queries and things like that. So, you know, I would have never have thought as a you know, a sculpture major that I was gonna, you know, learn all of these skills, but they were necessary, and as part of the process of teaching, or as part of the process of running an arts organization. You know, it's just a business that happens to be in the arts realm. And so I think it's really important that students not just focus on the thing that they love, and focus on that, you know, that passion, or the, like you said, the talent that they're so good at. There has to be that other part of it, because even if you are a world-renowned artist, you have to manage a studio, and you have to have employees and conduct payroll and do all of these other things. And granted, you can hire all of that out, but you also should know how to do it yourself so that you can make sure that it's being done right. So I think it's really important that students really work on those well-rounded education aspects, because it is important, and you will be required to use all of it.
Absolutely.
I would say, and I think that Dustin nailed this. I think what you need to be doing right now as a student is you need to be looking for internships or volunteer opportunities in arts organizations and or schools, depending upon where, you know, what you want to do, because you need to go find out if what you think interests you really does before you go down the pathway. So I think it's really important to get out and make yourself available to go figure it out. Go see if you think opera is your thing, go volunteer at the opera, or see if there's any internships there. Or if you think, you know, live theater is your thing, then go figure that out. If you think you want to work with children, please go work with them before you go down the pathway, because you may discover it's not what you love, right? So how disappointing to get your big degree and then go, oh, I hate working with children. Go figure it out now. So I think go volunteer. And what I know, like Dustin said, is that if you volunteer somewhere and you have a really successful and great experience there, our communities are pretty small. And so those are really great places to create and begin to create your network of people who know you, who know your skill set, who know what you can do. And when you finish with whatever your course of study is, that is really an important point for you to have a recommendation or even a job, because they already know who you are. And so I just say, get out there and you may not get paid, but I'm telling you, you will be paid at the end by the experience that you have and the knowledge that you have that maybe that isn't what you wanted to do. Find that out sooner rather than later. And then also just by the network that you've created. I tell you to go try new things. If you think you don't love something, go try it. You may discover something that you just don't know because you haven't had any experience. So I think you ought to do that. Once you discover what you want to do, I'm a big advocate of goal setting. So you should write down your vision. You should know where you're trying to go so you can figure out how to get there. I think that's a really an important thing. And it doesn't have to be like a big formal process, but somewhere on a piece of paper that you stick in a pocket or in a really important place in your dresser, write down, I want to do and have that somewhere so that I think if you speak it out loud in the world conspires for you to help you make it happen. And so I think that that's an important part of what you want to do. I think as you're getting to the end of your education, you need to learn how to translate your experience into the words of a resume. I think a good resume is really important because there are a lot of people out there with resumes. So you need to understand and learn how, or find a resource that can help you with translating what you know to a resume that someone will get, and then go practice interviewing. Please, 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 just learn how to do that and just go practice it. Practice it with somebody. If you have an internship, ask them to help you create a resume, or ask them to practice. What kind of questions might somebody ask? I think those are things that you can work on now. And especially if you're a student at TCU, I know there are resources that help you access those sorts of things. So go do it, because it will put you ahead above anybody else who hasn't taken advantage of those resources. So you need to give yourself a break and go get all the help that you can to be able to get a job. So I think those are things that you should be working on right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
I would add to a little bit about the internships. So, we live in a very, we're in a big city, but even then the arts organizations, it's a small world and it's a highly competitive environment for internships and program, jobs and opportunities. And so, it is easy to get discouraged when those internships fill up. I would encourage students to look at non-traditional arts organizations, so smaller neighborhood arts organizations. There's a lot of small arts groups that don't have paid staff, that are all volunteer staff, that would appreciate help. And a lot of times you get a more valuable experience in those organizations because it's all shoestring and everybody's doing everything. And so you have a lot more access than you do at a large arts organization where you might just work in one department and have a tiny little project. And so if your dream organization is the symphony or the opera or one of the big art museums, don't get discouraged if those internships are filling quickly, and maybe think about working at a chamber music organization or a small neighborhood theater. Those are where you have an opportunity to really delve in and get some good experience. So yeah, I would definitely just get out there and find those small organizations.
I concur.
Yeah. As a career consultant, it makes me so happy to hear professionals in the field giving the same advice that I would. Sometimes, to be perfectly honest, it has more impact coming from you all than it does from me, who's sort of in their surroundings all the time, and they just kind of go,
right.
Okay, sure, I get it. I need to come and utilize the resources that I have at hand, do those mock interviews and practice those things. So I really appreciate you two giving this kind of advice, because it really does make a difference for our students to take the time to utilize those resources. Dustin, you mentioning really thinking about stepping outside of the box a little bit and trying things outside, even within your course of study, that may be a little bit different, right? There seems to be a hyper focus often on those classes that are directly related to your major. And oftentimes it's those other classes, those electives, right, that really teach us about ourselves and who we are and what we like to do. And then of course, Kathryn, going out and making sure that you are gathering those experiences. Oftentimes, right, students think, I know exactly what I want to do. And then they have that first experience and go, maybe not, you know, or there's just a little pivot that needs to be made.
Right.
They don't know that until they're able to have those experiences. So I really, really appreciate the two of you sort of co-signing and co-stamping that.
Absolutely.
That we you know, I try not to preach, but I do preach it.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. So you started mentioning a little bit about utilizing those resources, honing certain skills like your ability to communicate, your ability to communicate your experience and your expertise on a resume and translate it in that way, your ability to speak in front of people in terms of an interview. Could you tell me maybe what are some other key skills that students should be honing right now?
I mean, those are the big ones. I mean, interviews as a hiring manager, I can promise you that, you know, again, specifically my experience at the Modern, it is a very competitive environment. You know, I'll post a job, even at our frontline staff, or, you know, just about any job, we get piles of applications because a lot of people just want to work at that building. That's why I've worked there for 20 years. The thing that differentiates applicants, because everybody looks about the same on paper for the most part. I mean, you have a little bit of experience over here. It is so much about the interview, and you have 20 minutes or 30 minutes to make an impact. And so, you know, it is so important that skill is learned and honed and refined, because that is where the decisions get made about getting a job. And you know, it's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of the job market. I would also, like I said, recommend learning some of those business skills. You know, learn a computer language, learn how to use Excel. You know, there's a lot of, you know, free classes online or low cost classes online to where you can take an Excel class and, you know, just get really good at that. And I promise you, if you can learn Excel and be really good at Excel, you will be indispensable at your organization. Whether you work at an accounting firm or whether you work at an art museum, it's just one of those things that I just don't think that people talk about enough and put enough emphasis on. And yeah, I mean, you could go and learn how to, you know, develop a website, or you know, learn Java or learn a computer program language or something like that, just to have an added benefit. But you know, those really core functions, Excel, or I mean, mainly just Excel. Just learn Excel. It's just the most important one.
Check. I would kind of agree with that. I would say that we get college students who come in, and I'm always so surprised that they don't know the basic Microsoft Office. And so businesses do not use Google Docs. They do not use the Google system. And so while there's similarities, for me, it's heads above, oh my gosh, you know how to use Excel, and here's the big one for me that always blows my mind. Nobody knows how to do a mail merge. I'm like, a mail merge, you have to, that's essential, you know, for things that I do, grant writing, letter writing, you know, all of those kinds of things. A mail merge is something that, oh my gosh, that's like 101. You ought to know how to do that. So I think I totally agree that you need to know software that is business software, not Google. That's not what businesses are using. I think that this is also kind of a strange one. I think you need to know how to business etiquette, like how to answer a phone. Sounds funny, but you got to know how to answer a phone, how to take a message, how to write down all of the information, because most of the time you're going to be starting in a job where you will probably get to do that. And so it's one of those skills that I'm always like, you don't know how to take a message? Okay, well, let's start here, because those are things that you will need to know in a business. You may not know them going in, but you're going to have to learn that. That is just, it just feels really basic, but those are skills that everybody needs to know. I'm the development director. I still take a phone call. I still take a message. The message needs to be appropriate for whomever it's going to. So everybody in we're a small group, we're all taking messages and doing things. So please learn how to do something like that. If there is a database or a specific software package, for example, in development, there are a lot of donor database systems. If you can learn one of those systems or become acquainted or have some experience with it in your volunteer or your internship work, that will put you ahead of other applicants who don't have that. There was one of our alumni, young man, did an internship. He was in North Carolina, did an internship at an arts organization, learned this specific donor database. He moved to New York looking for a job. This great job came up at Carnegie Hall. He was like, piles of resumes. And because he knew that specific database that they used, that was his key in, and that's what he does now. He's been there 10 plus years in development at Carnegie Hall because of that one little thing on his resume that made him stand out. So figure out what those are, where you want to work, and learn those kinds of things. I think that's important stuff. Learning to communicate well, verbally and written. You need to have that skill set. I think practice. Join something that forces you to get up and speak in public, whatever it is, some sort of, I'm trying to think of the name of the club. It's not coming to me right now.
Toastmasters.
Thank you. Yes, Toastmasters. Do it. Do something. Take a public speaking class. Pretty much my experience, especially if you're in development or if you're doing tours or whatever you're doing in your organization, talking to donors, talking to audience, talking. We do a lot of it. Please learn how to feel comfortable doing that. And sometimes it's the most terrifying thing in the world. You can be an actor and be on stage and learn your lines and be fantastic and be terrified to speak in public. But practice, learn that skill. And then written communication is key. I think it's really important to have nice, clean letters, to know how to edit yourself. Don't misspell, grammar, blah, blah, blah. All of those things that people are telling you, it's true. You need to have those skill sets. And so I think those are things that you can work on. I also asked our music director, she is the one that's sort of the merge of the two. She is a songwriter, choir director, and then she was at Fort Worth ISD as a choir teacher for many years. And so she threw out some things that I wouldn't have thought of. So for her, she suggested things that you need to learn about or classroom management techniques. If you are in the fine arts and you might become a teacher, because for us, all of our teachers are professional artists, right? So just because you're on stage doesn't mean you know how to manage a classroom. And so learn classroom management technique, because you don't act 24 hours a day or 12 hours a day. Maybe you're in rehearsal at night, but maybe you need a day job, and wouldn't it be great to have a day job in the field that you love? So learn some classroom management technique, that will help. She talked about time management, learning especially in an education environment, that you teach multiple classes, you have one planning period, you may be on duty in the lunchroom, then you're communicating with parents and staff meeting and all of that. How are you going to do that? Time management skills are really essential. So figure that out. And this one is one, especially if you're going to work with kids, that's really important. Learn about and understand professional boundaries between adults and students, especially if you're a young teacher or a young professional going in working with kids who may be a year or two younger than you. Learn those professional boundaries and learn what that looks like and understand that, because as a person who watches teachers, it's really important to understand that you are the teacher and they are the student. And what does that mean and what does that look like? Especially if you work with kids. It's just one of those things that you just have to be super careful with. And so, you're there to mentor, not to be a friend. And so that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. And if you don't know what those boundaries are, you can get yourself in trouble pretty quickly. So that's just something, I don't know where you would go and do that. I don't know if TCU has classes about that kind of, behavioral boundaries and things like that. I don't know, but that is something, talk to a mentor about that, about what that looks like and what that means. So I think those are things that, just looking at her list of things that would be important. And then she says, go out and go observe. As a choir teacher, she says, go observe schools who have successful programs and schools with less successful programs, because you're not necessarily going to walk into a school that has, the best choir. So what does that look like? And what does that mean for you? And how will you work on that? So those are some of the things that she suggested.
I'm going to add two things that your list made me think of. The first is just a really simple thing, and I don't think that this gets drilled in enough for students. But it's just the basic idea of proofreading. When, before you send an email, every single time, just read it over one more time. I promise you, the worst thing that you can do, and it is the most obvious and glaring and judgmental thing that happens if you get an email from somebody and it has bad grammar or bad spelling, and it's an email from someone that you don't necessarily have a close relationship with, it sets the tone of the conversation. And it is the most distracting thing for me. It's a pet peeve of mine, but it's just one of those things it's just so easy to do. Just read every email that you send just one more time, just once over, you'll catch errors, and it's super helpful. And yeah, of course, mistakes are going to happen, but when there's obvious mistakes or you're using, you'll catch those things, and it's really important.
That little red line under a word means something.
It means something. It's so easy.
Look at that.
Everything is trying to help you, and if you're just not paying attention to that, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is to find a mentor. It is, find someone, even if you're not in that field or you're not in that organization. Ask to, buy them a cup of coffee, buy them lunch, just, take them out, ask questions, develop that mentor-mentee relationship that is so valuable. Somebody that you can ask that has been in the field for a long time, you can ask advice, consultation, career advice. You're going to have opportunities that are going to come up, and you're going to need somebody to bounce ideas off of. And so having that mentor-mentee relationship is just so important. It may be that it's your boss, and it may be that it's somebody that is in your organization, but it could also be somebody that you've never worked with. It's somebody that you respect, or somebody that you have encountered in social circles that you're aware of, and you understand that they have some wisdom to impart, and I can't speak highly enough of that to get a mentor. It's just super important.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, the two of you, I just want to hire you. I want to hire you to work in career services, because these are the things that I tell students all the time. And it bears repeating, right? And oftentimes it bears repeating from people who are in their field, right? Who have gone before them and who can speak to the importance of all of these things, the importance of going back to the basics and being able to do the Excel spreadsheets and writing an appropriate email and paying attention to the little red line underneath and getting a mentor and conducting informational interviews, right? These are the things that students need to know how to do. And I've even had students tell me, oh, well, I don't need to put that on my resume. That's like, everybody knows that I know how to do that. No, they don't, right? They don't. Right. And even Kathryn, as you mentioned, that the young man who, had it not been on his resume, he may not have gotten that position, So I think it's so important, so important, all of the things that you mentioned, all of these skills that even, some of them may seem very basic, but they're still very important in the world and of work and in the world of business. They are, and sometimes the thing that will put you over the edge, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much for really giving us your expertise from a person who is in the field and who can speak to why it's so important. I really think it's going to be valuable for our students to hear.
It's not theory, it's real.
Yeah, it is. It's totally real. I think, as you said, I think it will 100% differentiate you from somebody who doesn't have those skill sets. Because if you come in and you already know how to do those things, then we can get to work, right? But if you don't know, then I'm going to have to train you and spend time to do that. But if you know, then all right, here we go. Get the phone and do it, because, we're busy. And when you come in, you've been hired for a reason to come in and do a job. And so if you already know those things, walking in the door, that's like, whoo, all right, here we go. So
and not everything is about differentiation. A lot of it is about organizational success, right? So if once you get the job, that's great, but then you're also part of a team that's trying to accomplish something, and you need to be part of that team, and you need to be a successful part of that team. And so, some of the things that we're talking about is differentiation, and it will help you get a job, but a lot of it is also just being a good part of a good member of a successful team, and that's just really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'd like to pivot just a moment, and Dustin, you touched on this just a little bit earlier about how in the fine arts world, it can often be a little discouraging to students when the finite amount of opportunities available or internships available to students are snatched up very quickly, and the importance of sort of thinking outside of the box when it comes to gaining those types of experiences that will make you more marketable once you graduate. Can you two speak to how COVID-19 has impacted your work in the field and what insights you've gleaned in terms of the hiring process and how it's changed?
I will tell you that it's made that finite resource or that finite opportunity even more scarce. All of us are dealing with budgetary crisis or budgetary concerns, difficulties. I'm not going to say crises yet, but maybe that's coming. But that means that there's less jobs and there's just as many people, and so it's just more challenging. That's not a great answer and not super optimistic, but what I would say is that and this is just in terms of a larger perspective, those jobs are scarce, but there are a lot of other kinds of jobs around the industry that we're in. So while I thoroughly believed that I wanted to be a curator and I was going to be a curator and I was going to do that, I realized very quickly that was incredibly competitive, and where I wanted to be was probably unattainable. And so I was still able to find a job that made me fulfilled and actually I love probably more than I'm not a great writer, and so I didn't realize that curatorial work is all about writing, and it's not just about hanging art. So I found a job that fit my skill set and fit what I love to do, and I'm able to contribute to the team. And it was that pivot that made me still able to fulfill my dream of working in an art museum. So the discourage, I will say that there are going to be some tough times ahead in terms of the opportunities, because there's just not very many of them, and the budgets are constrained. But it may mean that there's opportunities for you to look in other places that you hadn't really considered as a possibility. I always like to tell, everybody just assumes that there's just a couple of jobs in the art world. Like it's either curators or, people know about the membership departments and the development departments, but there are so many other jobs in art museums, like installers, preparators, registrars, conservators, security, like there's engineering. There's just a whole wealth of opportunities in the art world or in an art museum that, it's not just about the curatorial department. And so, looking around and seeing those other opportunities are really are going to help students understand that that it may not be as bad as it seems, because those jobs are still out there, and there's plenty of opportunities still in those fields, maybe just not in the very finite, curatorial field, or the conductor, or the performers, and those areas. So
thank you.
I agree. I think that right now, I think that there's a limited, and I'm thinking from the theater lens of all of the people that have been in the theater that are not in the theater right now. And so I think that as we're beginning to open up, I think things will become more available, but there are so many people who are ready to hop back into what they were doing before. So that makes it a little tough. But I would also say that this is a place where having those networks that you've created through your internship and your volunteer work are so valuable. And just sort of a little caveat about that. We talked earlier about this is a really small world. And so I will encourage you, if you have a volunteer opportunity or an internship, finish well, do it well, because it is a very, very small world. And so that's an important part of that process, is to do a great job at your internship, because that will follow you. Your great job will follow you, and your not great job will follow you. So just, keep that in mind. That said, I also agree, there are a lot of different jobs in musical theater that are not performing jobs. In our office, we have marketing and PR, we have development. We just happen to have an international department, which is fun. We've got an education department, we have teachers. I mean, there are all kinds of different jobs that are available for a musical theater company. And then there's the whole production side of it. So the whole tech side, lighting designers and costumers, and all of that part of it as well. So there are a lot of different jobs. Again, right now, I would say that the performance kind of jobs are probably the harder ones, but don't give up hope. Hang in there, I think that, as things begin to open, people are still going to need the support of interns and volunteers to help get back on their feet. So,
yeah.
I'm going to add just a couple of things too. So one of the things that I think that the COVID specifically has taught us is to be innovative and to figure out how to essentially be digital in a very physical, real world product. So, those kinds of learning how to think outside of the box, learning, again, those digital aspects, like figuring out how to run a camera and edit video and
yes.
produce good content. That is all very important, and will be super valuable. And this is the other big, huge asterisk that I would put with that, is that arts organizations are, while we like to pretend that we're very creative and innovative, we are not super open to disruption. So We like to do the things that we've always done, and it has always been done, and it is not really there's not a whole lot of willingness to be, leading edge and tip of the spear. So if you do get a job and you are, very confident that you have the next best thing, be patient and wait for the right opportunity to present those ideas. Don't try and force a square peg into a round hole. It's not going to go over well, I think, with a lot of old guard in the arts organizations. We've all been doing this for a really long time, and there's a lot of ingrained culture, and it doesn't change quickly. So don't get discouraged. Learn those skills and be ready to present those when the opportunities come. That's a whole other skill set, is learning when to say the right thing at the right time. But I think that has taught us a lot. This has taught us a lot about what is possible and how do we pivot in a world that doesn't allow you to come into a museum, or how do we expand our digital footprint, which is going to be important for the next generation of arts organizations.
Excuse me. I 1000% agree with that, because we had no technical sort of skills, and we went 100% digital, and we've done it all year long. And so we've learned so many things that we didn't know that we needed to know. But we also will keep that digital part of who we are now, because we've been able to connect with students all over the world, which is amazing. And we have teachers who are on both coasts, who are professionals, who are teaching our classes for our students who are across the world. And so to have that digital connection, we can't go back, because now we've been there, we've experienced it, and we love it, and we can't go back. And so having those skills, that exactly right, the editing and teaching us how to set our studios up and do all of that kind of stuff those are really valuable and critical skills. And I would say similarly, as a grant writer, many grants require some sort of digital attachment. So they want to see your work, they want to see your film, they want to see your shows, they want to see something. And I'm always looking for somebody who can produce a 2-minute and 40-second video that tells the history of the world. Here's the stuff in this folder, go. Because I don't do that, and nor do I have the expertise to make it look like I want it to look. I know what I want, but I need somebody who has that skill set. And so I know that students are very technically savvy. And so that is something you ought to put that all over your resume, about what your skill set is in that area, especially now, because I think a lot of people have experienced the good and also the hard of the technological change that we've had to do this year. And I think that also helps put your foot in the door. So yes, I totally agree about that.
And you would be surprised at how those the soft skills that you learn on like social media can translate. Like,
yes,
make a good TikTok video. You know what? That's video editing, right? Like,
yes, it is.
Learn how to do video editing. Now, don't put that you are a great, on your resume. Don't put that you have a great TikTok account that has 3,000 followers. That's not necessarily what you want to say, but you can say that you know how to edit video, or you know how to tell a story, or you know how to produce that content. So
absolutely
think about how your skills that you're learning in just your social life or in your just everyday life might translate into something that is a professional experience. So yes, social media expertise is really important. I wouldn't necessarily lean too heavy on what exact accounts that you have, but distill that, talk about it, be able to understand the back end of Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all of those things, so that you can, speak intelligently and professionally about those when you actually get a job.
Yeah, I think it's the flexibility and adaptability are the key terms that you both have been really discussing. It's this idea that, we have all been impacted by this a pandemic that none of us expected, but we all sort of were forced into adapting to. And we have, I work with College of Education students as well. And overnight, those students who were doing their clinical teaching in person
Right.
went to working completely via Zoom with their classrooms and managing a classroom completely via Zoom like we're doing right now.
My wife is teaching a clinical nursing class right now in the room next door. So imagine that, right?
Absolutely. And so students have had to learn how to adapt with those things, right? I've had an advanced student who started teaching dance lessons via Zoom and created a whole business out of this whole thing. And then another voice student who started a YouTube channel giving voice lessons, right?
Yes.
So these are the types of things that are outside of the box, outside of what you would think that you're going to do. And then it turns into something really, really creative,
right,
and in some cases, lucrative.
And that's that translation of your skills. Figure out what your skill set is and translate it to a business resume.
There you go.
Because you know more than you think you know, but you need to be able to describe it in a business language. And so it's exactly that. And if you don't know how to do that, then go to that TCU resource and get that done, because go to you and get that done, because those are really important. That's exactly that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing that knowledge with our students. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up here a little bit. If you could each just tell us a little bit about any opportunities at the Modern and Kids Who Care, respectively, that may exist for current students and alumni to gain some experience.
So from the Modern standpoint, it's always just check our careers page for opportunities, but really and truly, I would suggest just come if you want to work at the museum, or you want to work at specifically a museum or any arts organization, go to the programming that they're producing and get to know, almost arts people like to talk and network. That's just how we work. And so if you're going to the programming and the socialization that happens before and after those programs, you get to know the staff, because we all go to the programs that we're producing. We all hang out, we're there because we love what we do, right? And so you have an opportunity to meet the people that are producing those programs, make sure that they get to know you, make sure that they're, just learn that networking and be there. And when those opportunities do happen, you're going to be right there and right in the front line to be able to get those jobs and those opportunities. So yeah, just come to the programs. It's not a shameless plug for just the Modern. It's just any arts organization. Just go to what they're doing, so that you'll be there when an opportunity happens.
Absolutely.
That's fun. So we have, as I described earlier, this entrepreneurial sort of think thing that happens. And in the summer, we have a very specific group called the Kid Power Leadership Team. And this is a leadership curriculum that has been part of the organization. We're 32 years old, I think now. So, and so it's been part of the organization for a very, very long time. And there are specific internships that you can, as a student, a college student, apply for. We're on the TCU handshake system with these different opportunities. So just to quickly, because we don't have very much time, you can apply to be a development intern. You can apply to work with our PR marketing department. You can apply to work with as an office admin. So you're upstairs in the administrative office. You can apply to work as a production assistant with our PA team backstage. You can apply to be a performer in our musical theater camps that we're putting together. And then if you apply to be a performer, there is a whole hierarchy of jobs that are available within an organizational chart that sort of looks like a hotel. So we have a hospitality department, we have a security department, we have a food service department, we have an international department, but not this year because no international students are coming. And there's one other department, production assistants, I think. And so this includes training specific to Kid Power, which teaches all the 5 points of power about vision and all that sort of stuff. And then you go to work in your department, you're mentored in your department, your job makes a difference because our camps can't operate unless you do your jobs well. We have a morning meeting, you go and do your job. We have an afternoon meeting to wrap it up, see if there's anything that we need to do. Normally we have about 80 leaders who are first grade through university who are working in the summer with us. This last year, it was nobody. And so this summer, we're hoping that we'll be, ramping back up, but those opportunities are posted. And so you can go look on the handshake system and it gives you the job descriptions for all of them. And so we encourage and we love having college students come and be a part of our program. We have had a lot of TCU students come through, and they usually come back more than 1 year, sometimes as many as 3 years. And it is definitely an avenue to get hired as a teacher or something that happens in our organization. Or you get to perform, and it's really fun if that's your thing. And if it's not your thing to perform, then come work upstairs with me. We have fun upstairs in the office. So it's called Kid Power Leadership. And so, yes, there's lots of opportunities for that.
And you're on Handshake. That's wonderful.
Yes, we're on Handshake. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dustin and Kathryn, I want to once again just thank you so much for your time, your experience, and your expertise. This has been invaluable and will be invaluable to our students. We will be sharing this
Awesome.
on our YouTube channel, which is for the TCU Career Services. And I'll be sure to send it to you all when it is available as well. So once again, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Dustin, it was nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's